I'm Cass. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my October TBR. I have 12 books I want to talk through, which is extremely ambitious considering that the most amount of books I've read in a month this year so far has been 9, and in those months I had read a few volumes of manga. I'm feeling very ambitious this month. It's the spirit of fall possessing me, aka the spirit of delusion of my TBR. So without any further ado, actually I do have one ado, and that being the elephant in the room, which are my shelves. I feel like you would have noticed immediately that they don't look quite the same as they did in my last video, which is funny because next week you're getting a bookshelf tour. You can watch it and have fun. And I loved how my shelves turn out, but kind of obsolete. Anyways, all that to say is my shelves are a little bare. There are no knick-knackage going on in the back. And then you can see this sliver where that entire bookshelf is not really set up. I just started throwing books on the shelf because I was getting so frustrated that I just could not figure out how I wanted to piece everything together. But it's all good because now we're going to talk about my October TBR. Like I said, super duper ambitious, but I do have vlogs planned for you guys and I'm just so excited to get into it. So we're going to start off with a very, very ridiculous one, but I will tell you why, and it kind of makes sense. And that is Kilt by Alexandra Kiley. I'm not sure where exactly I saw this book. I want to say either in like an Instagram post or at the bookstore, and I just had to do it, guys. Addie is a travel consultant and she travels all around the world, but has been adamantly avoiding Scotland for mysterious reasons that have to do with her past. She is then sent to Scotland to help a struggling tour bus family with their business, and that is when Logan enters the picture. Logan grew up in Scotland, knows a lot of the history, and the last thing that he wants is some American expert coming in and telling the wrong tales and weaving stories that aren't accurate to the lore. It seems like there's a lot of animosity between our characters. This feels like it is maybe a little bit enemies to lovers, but it takes place in the Highlands of Scotland, which back in May I actually got to go and experience for myself, and I have a whole slew of Scotland footage that I have yet to edit into a vlog because I've had no time to vlog. So that video will be coming out later this month, and I thought this would be the perfect book to read for that vlog. So be excited. My experience in the Highlands was phenomenal, and I hope that Addie also can fall in love with the country like I did. The next is one that I randomly decided to add to my TBR on the whim because it felt very fall, and I was catching up with Katie's videos and she had read it and really enjoyed it. My copy from the library came in and I thought that this month would probably be the perfect opportunity to pick it up, and that is Where the Dark Stands Stills by A.B. Poranek. Now, this has been compared to Howl's Moving Castle very loosely, very whimsical. I recently watched Castle in the Sky and it became my all-time favorite Ghibli movie ever. And so I'm really searching for that like Ghibli magic fix that Castle in the Sky had brought me. And I know like Howl Moving Castle and like Castle in the Sky are two different movies, I am aware, but I still am just ready for some Ghibli-esque whimsy. And in this book we are following Liska, and she has these powers, but she doesn't want the powers, and she's been trying her whole life to suppress them. Yet there's rumors about this plant in these magical woods that she can, I think, like make a wish and like have them take away her powers. But she encounters a demon in the woods and she strikes a bargain. However, she soon discovers that her ancestors had also previously struck bargains, but they've all vanished mysteriously. Therefore, Liska has some unraveling to do to figure out the mystery of what happened and how she can use that knowledge to survive. I'm extremely curious to see what I'll think about this book. It wasn't a book that I thought I would enjoy initially, but I'm looking for that Ghibli whimsical fix that Castle in the Sky gave me, and I'm hoping that this book will deliver. The next book is The Ballad of the Last Dragon. Now, I did speak about this book in my fall TBR, and I'm so excited. October feels like the perfect month to pick this up, and mostly because the cover is phenomenal. But like I've said many times, the premise also is just right up my alley. We're following Syl, and she is a bard playing in this rundown old town, yet she wants to have her big break and become this world-renowned bard, but she can't really do it in this dingy little town, in the dingy little tavern she gets to play in. But a band of travelers pass through this dingy little town on their way to slay a dragon. That is when Syl convinces the party that they of course need to take on a bard, being her, for she can sing about all their conquests and them defeating the dragon and spread their glory and fame to the world. And of course, she has her own reasons for wanting to join the party, which is to make her name known. But some tragedy strikes the very beginning of the adventure, and that shifts the dynamic quite a bit within the party. And I'm just so excited to pick this up. It is by C.A. Farron, and the cover, I know I've talked about it every single time, but it is phenomenal to look at. And I'm so excited to read from a Bard character. Like I said in my fall TBR, the only other Bard character that I've kind of got to experience was Kvothe. Although he wasn't strictly like a Bard, he just was like a musician who was also like a magic user. So I'm really excited to see where this story takes me, and I love a good adventure story. Of course, my favorite series being Ranger's Apprentice, which is nothing but an adventure series. The next book I am excited to read, it is from one of my favorite authors, but I'm also a touch nervous because I haven't been in the best like reading spirits. I'm worried that this might just be one that uses too much brain power. Like I said, I've been moving a lot and my life has been very chaotic, and I'm not quite settled into my new place yet, so it feels like a very dense book to pick up. Just in case though, I went ahead and put Catabasis on my TBR by R.F. Kuang. This follows a story of two students who have to go rescue their professor's soul from hell because they need a recommendation letter. The concept sounds so wonderful. I've heard the world and hell itself is so fascinating and unique, and it has to do with logic and how those things can tie together and shape reality in hell. I'm not sure I will get to this book. I'm having my fingers crossed and I can at least start it. I'm just super duper intimidated by it, and I'm not sure why, because I jumped into Babel with no hesitation. 2022 me said, you don't scare me, R.F. Kuang, but 2025 me says I'm a little leery. However, regardless, I am, of course, keen to pick this up, so I do hope that I manage to squeeze it into my very, very packed October reading schedule. Kind of a change of pace talking about my next book, which is Hot for Slayer by Hazelwood. I had no idea this book even existed until I was just perusing Katie's Patreon Discord, and she had mentioned reading it and said it was good. I had gotten burned, well, Katie and I both together got burned by Cruel Winter with You. I think it was one of the worst Hazelwood books I've ever read, and then I had no interest in reading her newest release, and I feel like I hadn't read an Hazelwood book in a minute, so I thought I would dive into this novella. We're following a vampire hunter and a vampire. From what I understand, the vampire slayer wakes up with amnesia, and the only person that can actually help them is the vampire. And it takes place in Manhattan, and obviously it's a romance, and I find that so fascinating. I am not one for vampire books. I have been drawn more to them lately, and I think that's completely Katie's fault, so I'm gonna blame her for that. They're just not typically my cup of tea. However, with this being a novella, I feel like it could be like bite-sized. I didn't mean to make a pun there. It's not bite-sized. Anyways. It's not that funny. Anyways, I feel like it being a novella is just a good sample size for me to, you know, dip my toes into more like vampire-esque things without fully committing to an entire novel. The next book is one I recently hauled, and that is The Amalfi Curse by Sarah Penner. Now, I haven't read The Lost Apothecary. I want to say it was on my radar, but I never ended up picking it up. But the little blurb at the top says, "Powerful witchcraft, a hunt for sunken treasure, forbidden love on the high seas, beware the Amalfi Curse." Now, I love me a boat. I love me a story set on a boat. I love me this cover, the spine, everything about it. Well, this isn't giving fall. It being a recent haul just made me very, very keen to pick it up. And boats, like, need I say more? The Floating Worlds by Axie is actually going to be my very first book that I pick up for October. I'm filming a vlog for you all, and this is the book that I'm starting with. Very exciting stuff. I know. In this book, we are following two characters, Ren and Sunho. Now, Ren has this magical ability. Her village was attacked by demons, and she released this, like, blast of light. But it kind of put a target on her back for mercenaries to hunt her. I'm not sure, like, who put the hit on her and, like, why exactly she's being hunted. Obviously, I feel like I will discover that. And one of the mercenaries hunting her is Sunho. Now, Sunho wakes up with no memories, no recollection of his life other than holding a sword and knowing his own name. He's been doing like some odd jobs here and there, and he takes on, you know, hunting Ren like many other people, because I feel like the reward is probably very high for this magical girl, what have you. Their paths cross, but they have no idea that Ren is the person that Sunho is searching for, and Ren has no idea that Sunho is hunting her. I'm very excited to see how their dynamic goes, especially because we as the reader know about the situation between them, but the characters don't. And I feel like that is just something that makes this book very, very exciting. Now, I don't typically reach for romance in the fall. Typically, I read a lot of my romances in the summer. However, this summer has been so chaotic and so just wild that I hardly picked up any like straight romance books. My summer consisted of Veronica Speedwell, which technically could be classified as romance, but it was more like murder mystery historical moments with like dashes of romance that were so good, and Dungeon Crawler Carl. That has been my summer, like just those two series with a couple other like random books interspersed. Therefore, I feel like I need a little bit of a fix, a little bit of romance in my life, and that I'm going to do by picking up If It Makes You Happy. Now, this book screams fall. It takes place in Vermont during the fall. Everyone compares it to Gilmore Girl, and we have one character who moved home to run her late mother's B&B, but kind of sucks at it. So her hot single dad neighbor ends up helping her out. Now, Katie read this recently in a vlog, and I was a little leery because it's 500 pages, guys. And I'm like, there's no reason for a romance book to be 500 pages. Okay. But hearing her thoughts and opinions, it seems like we get a lot more of the characters being like fleshed out as their own individual, as well as, of course, the slow burn romance that goes throughout the book. I'm just so eager to see how their dynamic is and the tension, especially because there are a lot of romance books where the characters don't feel like real characters, or rather they don't have a personality outside of just like liking each other or just like lusting after one another. So hearing Katie's thoughts and knowing that these characters do feel real and fleshed out makes me even more eager to pick up this book. I have a few more books I want to talk about, 4 more to be exact. I'm going to kind of briefly talk about them because it's 2 books in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series and 2 books in the Veronica Speedwell series, which of course is coming off of my summer reading, trying to finish the series. Talking about Veronica Speedwell, first I have A Sinister Revenge and A Grave Robbery. Honestly, putting them both in October is a little ambitious. However, I have really been enjoying listening to them on audiobook, and I have a lot of work to do this month, so those feel like the perfect reads to have as background listening while I do other things, and the narrator is phenomenal. This is book 7 and 8 of Veronica Speedwell. No, I'm sorry, 8 and 9 of Veronica Speedwell. Book 10 comes out in March. So in case I don't get to it in October, I for sure want to get to both of them before the end of the year. That way I can be prepped and ready for a ghastly catastrophe. And then as for Carl, I am still like a quarter of the way. I think a quarter? A third? Or I think I'm actually halfway through The Eye of the Bedlam Bride, which is book 6 in the Carl series. I took a little bit of a pause just because I didn't want the series to end, and book 6 hasn't actually been my favorite. It's probably one of my least favorites in this series so far. There's still a lot of like really interesting things happening that make me like very excited about where the book is progressing to. However, the level that they're on, the setting and the way that combat works in this level, I do not like. I find the setting kind of boring, although I'm hoping in the later half of the books, like more things will come into play with the setting. It's just not been my favorite. So haven't finished that, but it is another series that I've been listening to via audiobook. Once I finish Eye of the Bedlam Bride, I will of course need to jump straight into reading This Inevitable Ruin, because that is the book that so much of the plot throughout the first 6 books have been leading up to, is book 7 and the floor that they are on. And I'm very, very excited about that. So those were the other 4 books that I just wanted to briefly talk about because they're deep into series and they're kind of like, they're on my TBR, but I hope I get to them, but they're not like super priority, but they're kind of priority. I just don't even know what's going to happen, but all of those I'll probably read via audiobook as long as I have the audiobooks for Veronica Speedwell. I need to probably put in a hold at Libby. We'll see. That's a later me problem. But those are the 12 books that I put on my TBR for October. Ambitious? Very. However, like I said in the intro, the spirit of fall has just overtaken me, as well as being moved into my new place. And in case you're wondering, it has been phenomenal so far. It has been such an upgrade to the past situations that I have been put in. So things are finally coming together in my life when it comes to moving, and I hope I don't have to move until way later. That is the plan, that is the goal. But let me know any books that are on your October TBR, or even your fall TBR, honestly. Any books that scream fall, I want to know. Please let me add even more to my already very full TBR. And let me know what you've been reading as of late. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope to see you in my next one. Toodles!